Good afternoon, everyone. Keith here, coming at you from Carolina Mountain Lights. And as you can see from all this stuff sitting out here in front of you, I've been pretty busy this year making new props for our show. It's what's going to be a brand new show this year. In the back there, I have the dancing circles. We're going to have about 12 of those in the show. Right in front of that, we got the mini trees. Mini pixel trees. I'm going to have 8 of those, and hopefully sometime in the next week I'll do videos on both of those, show how I build them. But what we're going to concentrate on today is what you see laying on the ground here in front of you. And most people know that what I'm most known for is my mega twig tree. And the reason I haven't set it up yet is I wanted to show some of the improvements that I've made on it while I'm setting it up, and you can get a good idea of the functionality of it as we go up with it. So we're going to jump right into it now with the first section. As you can probably already see, I have switched from PVC trunk to a metal trunk, and a lot of you last year wondered why the hell I would go with PVC on a twig tree that tall. Well, last year it was mostly about cost and about ease of working with it. This year I had more time and I went ahead and went with metal. All the holes on it had to be pre-drilled. Used self-tapping screws, and it actually went a whole lot quicker than I thought it would. But we'll go ahead and start setting it up and you can see what I'm talking about. Now, as you can see, I got a little fancy with it and got some umbrella covers, the beach umbrella covers. They fit these things just about perfect and they keep them well protected while I have them stored. Makes it a whole lot easier to carry them around too. As you probably figured out just from watching that, I have each level folded up. When I'm taking it down, I start from the top and fold each level up, and I have Velcro straps that I tie them up with. This makes it a whole lot easier and a whole lot neater for taking it down and putting it up. One thing you'll see is once I lay it out, the spacers on it and the support guy wires, they all kick in and do what they're designed to do. The spacers keep each twig spaced evenly from each other, and the guy wire support system holds the twig up to just the right angle. We'll do a couple more levels here. Now you'll notice that when I'm letting it down, some of them fall right down, some of them get hung up. You have to find all the places where it's hung. That's because there's so many things on this thing that can get hung up with each other that you have to take your time with it, but it still goes pretty quick. But well, let's go a little bit closer and I'll show you some of the upgrades that I've made here. Obviously the first one I was talking about is the trunk. The trunk is 2 3/8 inch galvanized steel pipe, and those of you that know anything about chain link fencing, these are the corner post or the gate post on chain link fencing. It worked out perfectly for this as far as size. And what you'll notice as we move on here is that a 2-inch piece of EMT fits perfectly inside of this 2 3/8 inch galvanized steel fence post. On these separator wires here, this is actually 80-pound test fishing line. Last year I used some rosin coated string that was pretty messy to deal with, a lot heavier gauge than this, and it just didn't go as well. This 80-pound fishing line is very strong. It's hard to even cut this stuff. Out here on the end, last year when I was setting these up and taking them down, had a lot of trouble with the ends of these wires where I'd straighten them out and cut them. I would rub up against them. I was all the time getting scratches and scrapes. Well, I found these online. These are 1/8 inch. They're silicone rubber end caps. They're very cheap, very easy to come by, and they work great on it. They slide right on. This galvanized steel wire that I use for the twigs is actually 1/8 inch, so it fits perfect. Now, the biggest change that I made to the twig tree this year is I eliminated the bottom section. Those of you that watched it last year know that last year it was a 20-foot mega twig tree. This year it only has 3 sections. It's only going to be a 15-foot. I did that for several reasons. One, it was very difficult to work with. That bottom section was extremely heavy. The twigs on it were 5.5 feet long each, so they didn't hold their shape well because of the length. And the biggest reason that I eliminated it was for safety. It was just extremely dangerous to work with a tree that big. So this bottom section is what used to be the second section on the old one. So last year we had, I believe, 2,500 and some lights on it. This year it only has 1,575. And I can't remember the twig count on it. I'll find that out. Okay, I'll finish up this first section and then we'll move on to the second section, show you how they join together. Okay, we have our first section all set up. A couple of things I want to show you before we move on to the second section. You can see what I was talking about earlier. That is a 2-inch piece of EMT that slid down inside of the 2 3/8 inch fence post, and have it attached there permanently with the self-drilling screws. This allows me to just set the next section just right on top of it. You'll see that hole that's drilled in it. That's so I can line up the second section with the first section. I have a pin that goes in there that holds it in place. As everybody knows that when you're dealing with these lights, all the sections have to, the starting pixel on each section has to line up correctly for it to show right. I've got the ladder all set up, and hopefully I can set this second section up there without falling and busting my ass. So let's give it a try. And these are the pins that I use to hold the two sections in place. I think I got these from a feed and seed store, like a Tractor Supply. One thing I forgot to mention, the top row on the first section obviously has no support like the rest of the rows do. It has to get its support from the next section up. So that's what those wires that you see hanging out from the second section, that's what they're for. Have a little hook on each twig of the top row there that those hook to hold it in place. I'll show you how that works. Now I'll give you a little close-up view of what I just did so you can understand it. Just have a hook on the twig and an eye from a guy wire on the second section up that comes down and holds it up. I already have it all adjusted to the right angle and everything. So I'm sure you don't want to watch me letting all this section, all these layers down, so I'll let all the second section down and then I'll come back and show you the third section. Okay, so the second section is all let out. Everything's in place. A couple of things I wanted to point out on that. See if we can get you close enough here to where you can get a look at it. I don't know if you can see it well, but the top two layers of that do not have a support system in place. That's because the twigs on that are short enough to where they don't need it. And the very top of it, you'll see the connector that's inserted inside the fence post is a PVC connector. This is the one place on this that I did continue to use PVC, mainly for the ease of use. And the top section is extremely light, so it's not going to put hardly any pressure on that. If you look down here at the top section, you'll see a piece of 3/4 inch PVC that just slides right into that connector on top. Those of you that saw my design video last year already know that the top section of this tree is nothing more than one of those store-bought twig trees. I designed the entire tree around that. So let's see if we can climb up here, slide this thing in. As you can see right now, this whole tree is totally self-supporting. Changing to the metal trunk with the metal inserts to connect them together. Keeps it nice and straight. As long as you have your portable hole nice and level, it'll stand straight on its own. It'll take a pretty good wind to take it down right now. However, when I set it up for a show, it will have guy wires on it. I just haven't put those on yet. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the Mega Twig Tree 2.0. Hopefully I didn't bore you too much with the setup. There's one more major upgrade I forgot to mention about this thing. See, I figured whenever I went from a 20-foot tree down to a 15-foot tree, I would lose some of my wow factor. I had to put a lot of thought into it to figure out how to regain what I lost there. And there was only one logical conclusion. I built a second tree. Yes, the one-of-a-kind mega twig tree is no longer a one-of-a-kind. It has a sister. I'm trying to figure out names for these things. The only thing I've come up with so far is like Twinkle Twins and Dasher and Dancer. If anybody has any suggestions, I'd love to hear them. But as I said, sometime in the next week, I'll be putting out videos, how-to videos on my mini trees and my dancing circles. But for right now, we're going to wait till it gets dark, and we're going to crank up the, if you show a new prop, you got to show it lit up. So once it gets dark, we'll crank up a sequence on this thing and see how it looks.
It's around the corner now. Don't you love it? All right. At home where I wanna be. Wrapped fresh by the Christmas tree. My baby, it's just my baby and me. Got the little one stuffed in bed. Keep Santa run through their head. So happy, it's so much fun to believe. Julie wants a rocking horse. My daughter Jessie wants a dolly toss. Little John wants a BB gun. Mama has saying just too young, just too young. Everybody loves Christmas. Everybody has fun. That time of the year, that holiday cheer, a good time for everyone. Everybody loves Christmas. I'll count the ways. You know it's almost here. Well, Christmas Day, Christmas Day. Checking on my list, I'm almost done. Had to buy a gift for everyone. It don't matter, it's just that time of the year. Alright. I spend the money and I don't look back. Maybe even wake up in a Cadillac. The man told me, said, don't worry, son, here. Everybody in the neighborhood got the houses looking really good. Hollywood's kinda disappeared. It all happened more than once a year. More than once a year. Everybody loves Christmas. Everybody has fun. That time of the year or a holiday cheer. A good time for everyone. Everybody loves Christmas. I'm counting the days. You know it's almost here. Well, Christmas Day.